I'm Elise Hugh.
And I'm Josh Klein, and we're the hosts of Built for Change, a podcast from Accenture.
On Built for Change, we're talking to business leaders from every corner of the world that are harnessing change to reinvent the future of their business.
We're discussing ideas like the importance of ethical AI or how productivity soars when companies truly listen to what their employees value.
These are insights that leaders need to know to stay ahead.
So subscribe to Built for Change wherever you get your podcasts.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, how tall is too tall for a building in Bloomfield? Well, according to Pittsburgh Zoning Board, it's apparently 75 feet, or I guess anything over 45 feet. Echo Realty was months deep into the planning phases for a big complex where the SureSave used to be, complete with a new, more modern grocery store, a public square, retail shops, and hundreds of affordable and market-rate apartments, all at the corner of Liberty and Main. It got a lot of public support, but once again on this show, a zoning variance may be the city's downfall. We're with a reporter who's been following it all. It's Tuesday, November 14th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. Ryan Dito, welcome back to CityCast Pittsburgh.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Seems like we always have you on to talk about the hubbub about development, especially zoning variances. I love it.
Yeah, it always seems to be when something goes wrong. We should try to talk when something just smoothly goes right, but that's been less often lately.
That's not your niche usually.
Yeah, that's true.
This time we're talking about what's happening to this proposal in Bloomfield at 4401 Liberty Avenue. What should we know about the developer, Echo, and their plans for this site?
Echo is locally based out of O'Hara Township, and they've done a decent amount of projects in the area. They usually work with grocery stores. They're a pretty known, well-known client with Giant Eagle. And they had another development that actually went through after some controversy as well. That one actually went through over by Shadyside East Liberty, the what's called the Shakespeare development, which is right next to the busway station.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was them too.
That was them, and so they're working with Giant Eagle there. There used to be a Giant Eagle grocery store there. They're going to be replacing that Giant Eagle grocery store there with a bunch of housing and a bunch of other stuff too. And Bloomfield was kind of set to get a similar development. And it's not looking so good for the future of that development.
Yeah, you would think a grocery store would be amazing news for the neighborhood, but there's been this setback. What happened at the Zoning Board of Adjustments?
Yes, so I should also say that there already is a grocery store there. It's called Community Market.
True, yes.
I actually shop there myself. I actually live in Bloomfield, and big parking lot, old unused VFA building. And there was a big development plan for it. Basically, I think it's 248 apartments, a newer kind of right size grocery store, a little bit smaller, but new amenities, and also a public plaza for the neighborhood, which we don't really have in Bloomfield. Mm-hmm. It was really a pretty big plan. It had gone through lots of community process. Bloomfield Development Corporation had kind of been working just to get the word out about what that was, and eventually you had a really good amount of support for something that you usually don't see. Sometimes you see these kind of controversial where a lot of neighbors are mad, all this other stuff. It seemed like a lot of neighbors were kind of on board. There were still a few that were a little upset, the ones that were closest to the development. But yeah, that was the plan, and everyone kind of thought it was going to go through, and then we get the zoning board a variance decision, and it basically says, no, we're not going to do the variance, which is just the first of many veto points that usually go along with development. If you can't get past the zoning variance, that's usually pretty bad luck and not a good sign.
What went wrong with it, Brian? Like, is it just that like somebody didn't, dot their I's and cross their T's? Is it like the right people weren't sold on it? What happens when somebody, like, especially when it's something like height? That seems like there's tall buildings elsewhere in Bloomfield.
Yes.
It seems like it's a thing that could go through. I don't know, 45 feet versus 75 feet side by side because Pittsburgh's so hilly. But like, I don't know what went wrong.
I think a lot of people are still confused. The developers have not commented on what their process is to appeal. I spoke to the BDC about this, and they were pretty perplexed on kind of why it was denied. Now, by the book rules of zoning variance, right? Under the zoning rules, you cannot build that height of a building in that specific zoning. Now, you cross the street and you're in a different zoning district technically. So that's why you kind of see these things. You go down the street down toward Baum on Liberty. You also have taller buildings down there. You also have the hospital, which is taller. West
much
Penn,
taller, yes.
much taller. But again, those are all different zoning districts. The zoning map looks like a crazy puzzle. If you're familiar with gerrymandering, it kind of has those vibes. 100%.
Like it's squiggles and very colorful and strange.
Yes. And so that's the issue, is that technically it does not fit in that zoning use. So you go get a variance. Now, that is the very, very, very typical process of all development in Pittsburgh over the last, 30 years or something like that. That is almost every large development needs to get a zoning variance because we have not updated our zoning code in a long time. So they have to get variances when they want to do something different. Anyway, so that goes through. Normally, when a project like this does a ton of community input, gets buy-in from the local registered groups like BDC. I also think Lawrenceville United was also supportive of this, even though it's just on the border of the neighborhood.
Yeah, but they want their neighbors to have nice things.
A nice new grocery store, a nice public plaza. This is in a really good transit corridor. There's three bus lines that go through there. I ride all of them, so I know. And also this intersection is kind of an eyesore. It's always been kind of like you come into Bloomfield and it's just this empty parking lot and these old buildings, and it just doesn't really scream, hey, look at this up and coming neighborhood, which Bloomfield is, right? There's a lot of people like to live in Bloomfield. Our housing prices have gone up. Our rents have gone up here because there's huge demand to want to move here because it's got access to grocery stores, it's got access to transit, and it's got a kind of up and coming business district with new breweries and new restaurants. And so I think a lot of people thought this was going to be just that kind of normal evolution of a neighborhood that like has this. It's like, okay, let's get some development in. Let's allow for some more housing because it's such a popular neighborhood already. Yeah. And luckily, Bloomfield was also already part of the inclusionary zoning district. So that meant that any new large development was going to have to include affordable housing, permanently affordable housing. And that would have doubled the amount of permanently affordable units in Bloomfield because we don't have that many, because we don't have that much development. And so that all went through, and the zoning board just kind of said, we don't have the authority to do this. And I think they were kind of signaling, hey, we got to update the zoning code if we're going to be doing, more development like this. I think they had written specifically, we don't have the authority to undermine council's authority on zoning. And so city council has the authority to rewrite the zoning code, mayor can sign it, all that other stuff. And I think that's the difference between this project and the one that I think we talked about last time, the Irish Center. Yeah,
and the condo proposal there also got denied by the zoning board. And now the space is still very much in flux.
I'm Elise Hugh.
And I'm Josh Klein. And we're the hosts of Built for Change, a podcast from Accenture.
On Built for Change, we're talking to business leaders from every corner of the world that are harnessing change to reinvent the future of their business.
We're discussing ideas like the importance of ethical AI or how productivity soars when companies truly listen to what their employees value.
These are insights that leaders need to know to stay ahead.
So subscribe to Built for Change wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, so if there's no true villain in the zoning board, what should council then do? I mean, how big of a project is it to reconsider our zoning code? Like, would they have to do the entire city at once, or could they just maybe think about just this one block to get this one project through?
They absolutely could just do one block. They did that for the Oakland Crossings project. That is also in flux. not really sure, but they have the authority in Oakland to do that, and it's in that central South Oakland area where they redid the zoning just for that district. They could draw a little new district just for like maybe that intersection, honestly, which I think would probably be a pretty good idea to kind of change it. So they could just do a acute fix. If they wanted to just fix the zoning code, the whole thing, update it, that's a huge lift. I've heard that is something that has been being worked on. I talked to the mayor about it a while ago when he met with the Trib editorial board, and he said, stay tuned in a few weeks. Well, it's been a few weeks and we haven't heard anything yet. So,
well, yeah, I mean, yesterday was the State of the City address, so I think he was probably a little bit busy getting the budget process kicked off. What about City Councilor Deb Gross? That's in her district. Have you heard anything from her, like her appetite to kick off this process?
I haven't heard anything from her. I know that I think she was supportive of this project, but it's also like, I don't know why they didn't do that before. Like, why wasn't that done before? But maybe because they just assumed, like most projects, you go for a variance, and the variance is usually okayed, especially if it has broad community support.
Well, is there any way for people who maybe do have strong feelings about this development for them to get involved now? Is there anyone they can go talk to or, throw their hat in with? Or, if they're against it, maybe let folks know that too.
Yeah, best would just be to contact the Bloomfield Development Corporation. You can send them an email if you're opposed, or if you could send them, hey, I want this. What can we do to fix this? They will facilitate kind of all of that comment, and they take in those comments and they communicate that with the developer and with the city. So I would say that's probably the best way. If this was still in front of the zoning board before, like if it wasn't decided, then you can contact the zoning board directly and submit your comment. But I usually have to live within the neighborhood or have to be like close by to do so.
So now the developer, Echo Realty, they have 30 days to appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. What do you think, like, as you kind of zoom out of this whole thing, that this decision from the zoning board maybe says about what it's like trying to build housing in Pittsburgh? Like, it just seems really hard in this neighborhood and in a lot of others.
It is. I think that's true in Pittsburgh. I think that's true in almost every city in the country, with the exception of cities that have really done big, broad zoning changes. It's extremely hard. If you look at Pittsburgh, where we've gotten housing in a kind of abundance is probably the Strip District. And that's because there weren't that many people who lived there at all. There was
not
mostly
on that
empty.
Side of Smallman, no.
Yes, right. And so that was kind of the neighborhood where they go, wow, they're just like building. All those places are filled up too. Like it's been working. But once you get into these other areas where there are kind of already established neighborhoods, it's just a lot harder. You either get local opposition, or you get the zoning kind of going, well, it's out of character.
We've never done it before, so we don't know if we can do it now.
Yeah, right. I mean, when has Pittsburgh had any kind of significant development push in the last, I don't know, 70 years? Like, it just hasn't really happened. And so I think we're just starting to get a little bit, I think we need to have a little perspective too. We are nowhere near any other booming U.S. city, like cities in Texas, like Dallas and Austin, Phoenix, Denver.
Nashville.
Oh my gosh.
Cities with cranes in the background, just perpetually dotting the skyline.
We are not even close. In fact, we're probably an underperforming city in terms of development. We get our lunch eaten by Columbus. I think I've heard Rochester, New York has more development than we do. I mean,
oof.
So yeah, but we're also not super growing. So maybe there isn't the huge demand there for it. But it is interesting when we do have these projects and we do see these kind of things. we still have roadblocks. So,
but it makes you wonder, if we built it, would they come? Like if people had nice places to live in growing neighborhoods that felt like there's some activity there and some respect for what came before, would it change things?
I could only say that the recent evidence has shown, yes, that in the Strip District where there's a lot of development, the vacancy rates are really low. In downtown where we have housing developments, the vacancy rates are low. They're all, I think occupancy is all like in the 90s, 90 pluses, percentages. There's been rumors about when they built the development in East Liberty, that those weren't filled up. That's not true. Those are filled up. I think every American likes new housing. You see it even in our region. Most of the new housing we get is more like maybe townhouses or single family houses in the North Hills. Mm-hmm. That's the fastest growing part of our region. That's where the population is actually growing because people want to move into nice housing. So yes, I think so. Obviously, you can overdo it, but I think the only way that you could overdo it is if we had some like massive subsidies that were doing that. And we've kind of cut back on a decent amount of some of those tax breaks for development, where then you'd be kind of falsely incentivizing this development maybe before there's actually people to move in. These developers want to build because they feel strongly that there's demand for it.
Well, if those plans do take shape, we know you'll be watching. As always, Ryan, thank you so much for your reporting.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're liking the show, please tell someone, leave us a nice rating, a nice review, and make sure you're subscribed to that Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon. You were constantly taking us to church on zoning variances in this city.
It is my stump speech, I guess.
Did you know that you were going to have this code memorized in adulthood?
I wish I did, honestly. It's impossible to memorize this whole thing. It's huge.